Well, here we are. It's David Ingram, and I have laryngitis. I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this whole 3 hours. We're starting off here tonight with Kenji Okuda, and I'll introduce him in a second. Then we're going to Dan Walco at 7 o'clock and Paul Swingle at 8. So hopefully they're going to talk a lot because my voice is had it. Went to the doctor this morning and said, "Oh, you got a viral thing, nothing we can do about it, don't talk much." So that's why I am. Now, I love being one-upped. There's nothing I like better than when I get a little cocky, think I'm pretty on top of myself type of something, and I think I'm on top of the world. And one day I was talking to a gentleman, and he said something about having been over in Uganda. And I said, I talked to Idi Amin one time, and he said I wrote his acceptance speech. And this is I'm going to call you a friend,
Yeah,
Kenji, because
fine.
you, from that moment, I just thought you were a wonderful person. Anybody who can one-up me is thing. And
Got something.
it was so funny because after that, and since then, I found out all sorts of other things about you.
Thank you.
That, now, first of all, how old are you?
Let's see, 87.
87 years old.
Yeah.
87 years young.
Yeah.
And still tromping around. You walked up my 51 stairs
Oh, yeah.
today.
Yeah.
You were breathing less hard than I do, and I do it every day. So you must be in pretty good shape. And you're an American
By birth.
by birth. You were
Yeah.
born in the States,
Yeah.
correct?
Right.
But you and another, I'm going to call him a friend and acquaintance, David Suzuki, and when I had the daily television program, I can remember one of the most emotional times that I ever had on that. There were two good emotional times. One was with Bill Vanderzam, who everybody thinks of sort of as a hard nose, but he talked about the Second World War and being a young lad in Holland and living on tulip bulbs, how many different recipes his mother had to cook tulip bulbs. And the other was David Suzuki, when he talked about being 12 years old in Vancouver when Pearl Harbor took place, and he was just born in Vancouver, just rounded up and stuck in P&E grounds and taken off in the cattle barns, and it was a very emotional time. And you had the same thing happen to you as well in the States.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the war broke out, and that very evening, 6 p.m., I can recall, knock on the front door. Two men walk in, identify themselves as FBI agents, and said they felt they were here to escort my dad to the immigration station where he would be held for, they thought, not very long.
Now, just your father at that point.
Yeah.
Now, your father was born in Japan, I take it.
He was born in Japan, but had come to the U.S., landed in San Francisco when he was still relatively young. I'm not sure of his age. Then he worked for a while in San Francisco, meeting the ships coming in from Japan and escorting the Japanese immigrants who had arrived looking for opportunity to jobs that my dad had more or less generated or developed with
farming
families in the San Francisco area.
In the Central Valley and so on, all that.
Well, no, this was initially quite close to San Francisco.
Quite close to San Francisco.
Yeah, because this was the first batch of Japanese immigrants coming.
Okay, so that would be in the 30s. Late
Oh,
30s.
no, it goes back almost into the even before 1910, 1920 period.
Oh, so after First World War, in between the wars period.
Yeah.
And then, so they came and got your father the same day as Pearl Harbor, you're saying. And that was because the population was terribly afraid of what was going to happen.
Well, the point was that immediately the government FBI was presumably had in preparation the people whom they considered potentially dangerous because they were Japanese leaders in the Japanese community, were spokesmen for various Japanese groups, and others whom they felt, in my dad's case, some of the main concerns were that he was active in the Japanese community, that he participated and attended a lot of meetings with visitors from Japan, etc.
So he knew who everybody was.
Yeah,
A community leader,
that's right.
very much so. You said that when they took him away, they were going to, they didn't think it was for very long. How long did it end up being?
Well, the first batch that they picked up, maybe 30 to 40 or 50 Japanese nationals who were active in the Japanese community in Seattle. And they were all sent to Missoula, Montana, to a camp which had been initially used for prisoners of war from Germany.
From the First World War or from the Second World War?
World
Still the Second World War.
Yeah.
So they actually were interred, as it were.
Well, they were just held there, and then there was a hearing for each of those who had been capped or taken by authorities in Seattle.
Okay.
And I was able to, or was they government funded my trip to the hearing that was held for my father.
Okay. And what happened then?
Well, my father, hearing, which was, I guess, a group of judges, I don't know who they were, decided that he was too old, he was in his 60s by then, that he was too old to be a danger to society, so they paroled him.
Okay.
So he was then free, and he was moved to Spokane.
But not free to come back to Seattle or go back to
No,
Seattle?
but we had all been moved out of Seattle by
So
then.
you had been moved by then,
Oh, yeah,
too?
by that.
And you were a student at the University of Washington, I believe.
Yes, I was a student at the University of Washington when the war broke out. We were removed.
Would you like a glass of water or something, too?
No,
Or something?
I'm
You're
fine.
Good.
We were removed. We were ordered, I should say, initially into trying to move into what were then, or what were fairgrounds, county fairgrounds. And the Army had built barracks, wooden barracks, military-style wooden barracks. And there were 4 so-called parking areas that were associated with the fairground, and or 3 of them, and the 3 parking areas each held several thousand of us that had been moved out of Seattle, or were to be moved out of Seattle. And the main fairground itself was sort of the camp management area. So I ended up somehow becoming a spokesman for the one camp. And so I could walk across as required to the central fairground area where the administrative headquarters were.
Well, you didn't just become a spokesman for that camp, because you then went on to, you got, you
Well,
were...
there's quite a bit of time in
Yeah.
here. I just was only a spokesman for the one group. And then after about, I guess a month or so, and then we were about to be moved to more permanent facilities. And the group in Puyallup, outside of Seattle, where we were being held, the group was to move to a more permanent camp built by the Army military in Idaho. But I got special treatment in that I was called into the central command office and told I would be I was to be on the train to heading for California, heading for San Francisco, 3 hours later.